I'm Hayley Watts. I'm one of the productivity ninjas at Think Productive, part of the UK team. And I guess I got interested in facilitation, thinking about training and meetings and how when people get together, they come up with like good creative ideas. That kind of idea that sometimes 5 heads are better than one. So I guess I got interested in facilitation through my experience of being a trainer, through the process of working with Graham on the book. So we wrote a book called How to Fix Meetings. And a lot of that, I guess, is about how to facilitate discussion or even participate in discussion. That just got me even more interested in thinking about kind of facilitation. And when I've thought about some of the conversations that I've facilitated rather than courses that I've trained, I've worked with some organisations doing kind of work on values or things around strategic planning, things where you're really drawing out the ideas and the solutions from the people who are coming along to be facilitated. And I think when you do that as an external person, it kind of looks and feels a bit different, but helps people to unleash that kind of creativity, I suppose. So I did some training and accreditation process with an organisation called the Association of Facilitators, which was just great, kind of thinking about the group dynamics, how people work together. People can have a very different experience of the same time together as well. So just kind of thinking about that. And I think the thing I love about it is being able to draw out contributions from everybody. I'm sure lots of people have got experience of having been in a meeting or a planning session or a training course, and maybe 2 or 3 people kind of chat and contribute a bit more than others. So one of the challenges I think for a good facilitator is kind of allowing everybody that wants to be able to contribute to do that. There will be times where somebody says, actually, Jen, no thanks, pass, I'm all good, I've not really got much to say. And that's absolutely fine. But what doesn't work so well for people is when they're sitting there, they really want to say something, but there perhaps isn't the opportunity or the right moment, or they don't feel that they can voice their opinion. So I guess good facilitation allows people to do that. Yeah, good question. So I think training, when we're delivering the Inbox to Zero course, for example, we might come along and we might facilitate a conversation about how is email working for you, what's it like, but then we might suggest to people some solutions and ways forward. So as the trainer, I'm coming along with some ideas and some thoughts about how people might do something differently. I'm looking to share some knowledge and bring people on that kind of journey with me. Whereas with facilitation, we're kind of saying, actually, we've got this goal, we want to put together our business plan, or we want to define our values, or we're changing our business model because things have changed for our clients, so we need to do something different. And maybe no one person has the answer, or everybody might think they do. And it's drawing out that information. It's enabling people to articulate their ideas, bounce their ideas off each other if that kind of works for them, so that you come up with some solutions and some ideas that might be better than what each individual would have come up with themselves. Very often it can be helpful when everybody that's taking part in the conversation wants to have their say. So when everybody that is taking part in that conversation is perhaps quite deeply involved or invested in that outcome or that decision. So when you're maybe looking for a bit more creativity, maybe there's a difficult issue to resolve, like tensions might be a bit higher. Maybe there's kind of a group that want to go down one road, another group that want to do something else or take a different approach. So maybe where there's a bit of a lack of alignment, perhaps, maybe where you just want to get really creative and try something new, come up with different ideas. So I facilitated a session recently with a primary school, and I think that was useful to have me as somebody who's not involved day to day in how the school runs, because I was able to ask different questions, encourage them to be think outside the box sounds really cheesy, doesn't it? But I guess that's what we're kind of looking at. No idea is a silly idea, but then bringing that back to reality. Part of that facilitation journey is kind of encourage people to get creative, but then kind of think, okay, well, what do we take from this? How do we use some of these perhaps more unusual ideas or things that aren't realistic because there isn't the budget or the time frame, and how do we approach those ideas or use the essence of that idea? What's that idea about? What does it give us that we didn't have before, and how might we make that just a little bit easier? I think it's really important to have a clear goal so that everybody's working towards the same goal. So rather than we're just going to have a bit of a chat about how this works, probably is a bit too vague. Like, we want to come up with 5 ideas that we're going to implement. 2 are going to be short term, 3 might be longer term. So for example, just having that really clear purpose, I guess, around what it is that people are looking to achieve. What problem are you looking to solve? Or what approach do you want to take? Thinking about making sure you've got enough time. Very difficult to have a really in-depth conversation where there's going to be conflict, that there might be disagreement within the team. Making sure that there's space to explore that so that everybody gets an opportunity to have their say, but not in a confrontational way, if that makes sense. So kind of setting up the environment and encouraging people to listen to each other and what each other have to say, and to respond in a way that is about the ideas and not attacking perhaps the other people. And I think having a conversation with everybody beforehand is really important where that's possible, just to kind of get their thoughts and their ideas. Are there any things that they're worried about in terms of kind of taking part in a bigger group conversation? So thinking about getting everybody to introduce themselves and say something positive early on in the meeting, that helps to set the tone that firstly everybody's going to contribute and participate if they would like to, and that it's positive and it builds on people's experiences and ideas, rather than it's negative and kind of I'm not going to do that, we did that before, it didn't work. It's like, okay, well, it didn't work. What might make it work if we were to explore it again? So being able to kind of turn some of those questions on their head, if you like. Everything's very tailored to what the individual needs. So if, for example, you say, well, we've got these organisational values, but they don't really mean anything, we don't use them, and you wanted a facilitator to come and really think and explore about how you might use those things on a day-to-day basis to ensure that those kind of are the behaviours that drive the organisation, then we would tailor a programme that's around that. It might be that it's a new team that are getting together and like people haven't met in person before. Yeah, there's a lot of teams around where half the team are new and we've not met each other yet. So thinking about, well, there's lots of change. We're going to need to do things differently going forwards. What does that look like? Might be things that it would be good to involve an external facilitator with. And what I would do is I would speak to people in the organisation to try and understand, what is it you want to achieve? What's the result you're looking for? Is it a new business plan? Is it a new set of behaviours that will be common across the organisation or across the team? Is it that you're looking to solve this particular problem for your clients and thinking about what a service for them might look like in the future? So we'd have a really clear output, I think, for want of a better word, of what people would get at the end of that. And then the session would be tailored around that. Okay, well, how do we put the building blocks in place to think about this in a creative way? How do we get creative? How do we come up with our best ideas? How do we allow everybody to have their say and their contribution? But then how do we start narrowing those ideas down? People might come up with 150 new ideas, but if you're writing a new business plan, you need kind of 3, 4, 5 priorities. You don't need 25. So how do we narrow those down? So we do some kind of like fun and interactive stuff, different ways to think about how we filter those down to come up with the ones that are going to make the most impact. Yeah, so you can find me on the Think Productive website or on LinkedIn. So I'm Hayley Watts. I think I'm the only productivity ninja called Hayley across the globe. So I should be relatively easy to find. My email address is hayley@thinkproductive.co.uk. So that's probably the best way to get in touch.